Hi, all. Welcome to another episode of Saturday Architecture. Today, I thought we would discuss about uh, how do you use pain. So, in the last discussion, Venkat was talking about using pain as a means to find purpose. And probably as individuals, teams, we kind of tend to avoid pain, right? But actually, pain is a very good indicator of what really needs to be done. So, if we can consciously acknowledge pain and keep our focus on pain, maybe that would help us get to the right purpose of what we want to do. We have with us Deepak, uh, who's and PK, who are with Microsoft. They kind of help in implementation. Raja works as with the CIO team as an architect with Standard Chartered, and Gowtham is with a retailer. He takes care of IT over there. Thanks all for joining. Uh, so maybe I'll just make an opening statement and then would be glad to hear from all of you. So one of the things which I kind of found out is it's hard to um, look at the pain, right? Because I think one challenge which I used to face is when we talk with pain, um, typically customers are kind of not too open about it. There's a little bit of shame in explicitly telling what your pain is. It's like a weakness. So if we I've had these customers, right? I says, okay, tell me the top three problems that you face as a company. Immediately their body will become stiff and then say, no. I mean, like, we are good. Don't have any specific problem, right? But we just want to do things better. Okay, we are all good. Now it's like as though if that person acknowledges that they have a problem, they'll get fired from the job. And then, like, how can you have a problem in the org? What are you doing about it? Kind of a thing, right? And this is even more harder when you're in a pre-sale scenario. I don't know what your experience. Maybe all of you can share your experiences, especially in a pre-sales when you walk to an open customer, right? And especially in India, right? They are very uncomfortable about talking their problems to a third party. And IT itself is a kind of third party internally, right? You are not, you are a they person, you are not a us kind of a person. And maybe Raja can talk a little bit more about that in this us versus they, right? IT is the they, okay? Business is the us kind of a thing. So that's one big challenge which I have seen when you try to get the focus on the pain itself. And one of the cases where I could say it did help is when we were with Cognizant. I think PK would be familiar with. So there was this thing called one-click approvals. So the classical thing that all of you would have faced is getting approvals. There are hundreds of approvals that happens in an enterprise, literally daily, from a leave to an expense to this. And if you look at it, right, the biggest pain that's involved in getting an approval is to give an approval. Okay, now at least it's better. When we did it around 10, 11 years ago, you click on a link, it will open up a page, you will give your password and login. Then there will be a list there. You go and find out for which item you have to approve, find that item, okay, then put a comment, I am okay with this, and then press the submit. Okay, it will literally take a person some 4-5 minutes to do this. But more than 4-5 minutes, the cognitive cost of doing this and opening an application and going there will be so huge. So one of the things that we did is called one-click approval, by which what used to happen is we wrote a small, the Cognizant's internal IT team had done that. They actually wrote a kind of a small service, okay, at that point in time, where each application will actually tell that, I am a leave approval and the key elements, right? 2 days leave from A to B. And then what I'll do is they'll just say, I want approval for this, and send it to that intermediate service. That service will now send it as an email and also put it as an IM into Skype. Okay. And what it will and then what that person has to do is just like IVR response, they can say yes or a no. Okay, that response will again be pushed back into the application with a callback. Okay, and this was a super hit thing, and this was not a very complicated application, but the amount of pain it removed in an organization, right, was pretty huge. So, and these were the days when people could just reply and do an approval of a PC or a holiday from their BlackBerry itself, even without going to a website, right? Um, and so there were these kind of that's an example in which when you focus on the pain, right, the solution actually is this. Otherwise, classically, if you say I need to have a good approval, you need to think of revamping 20 different applications from the user interface itself. Okay, so this is a exam which I came to my mind on why a pain, it's hard to get it, but if you do get a pain, what is the kind of um, let's say tiny magic that you can produce? Okay, so whatever your experiences, how have you faced this scenario?
I think you may want to call out by name because
Okay.
there are 5 of us.
Okay, so maybe Raja, for example, right, if you look
Sure.
at one of the in the current scenario or whatever, right, how hard or easy is it to take this approach, right, of people absolutely acknowledging what the pain is, right, and second, kind of getting it into a tangible measurable form, so when you put a solution, right, you will know whether the pain is coming
Metrics,
down
yeah.
or not.
So I'll take this into two different eras, all right? For example, the 10 years, what we are doing for 10 years and what's happening for last 3-4 years. Okay, so I'll just
Okay.
split it into two parts, right? In the first part, most of the pain, right, it's come as a symptoms. They see some symptoms either from the market pressure or something with respect to the service tickets. I'll put it that way. That is the basic thing that will hit the decision makers, that something is we have to do about it, right? That's a symptomatic approach, right? The second problem that we face as an architect, which is internally within the organization, is they like the patient going to the doctor and they already looked at Google, they already looked at some guys who are their friends, and then
Yeah.
how all their things put it together and come to a doctor and ask them to give a solution. Right?
Okay.
That's a typical problem we were facing 10 years back, literally, right? So I mean, the decision makers will get Microsoft, will get somebody else involved, right? They give the solutions, but the reality is could be completely different. What is the root cause of the pain will be completely different. That's where the architects within the enterprise will feel it, literally, right? So, but when we have a discussion, then it could be a completely different solution. But they would have already made the decision and coming to an architect that this is how they are proposing. So, what do you want to do about it, right? So, understanding the real pain is the biggest. I mean, understanding the problem statement. I'll put it the simplistic word, right? Understanding and putting that problem statement, is a pain that you're referring to, Kumar, in the old era, right? That's the key. I mean, one of the architects, internal architects of an organization, the main objective is to really define that problem statement. Okay, so what define that pain? Okay, so that was a challenge before. Now the challenge is a little different. Last 3-4 years, right?
Hmm.
Because of the technology. The changes are very frequent. For example, earlier we used to have Java. At least we have some platforms which can sustain for 4-5 years. We know what it's going to do for next 1 year or 2 years, right? Now it's gone. Amount of framework that's available, the amount of the transformation that's going in the technology world, in the open source communities, in terms of those things are mainstream right now. Before that, the enterprises would have really thought twice before using to the open source. Now that's become a norm right now. So whatever the framework they are trying to use, it's given to the choice of the team to select it, and as long as they provide the business solutions, that's fine. Okay, so because of this advancement, it's not single pain, it's multiple pains. It's like casualty, right? The
Okay.
patient is a casualty and it's just moving in a van or in an ambulance, and we have to fix it, right? So now if you look at the role of an architecture, then it's a completely different world together. I mean, that's why probably I had a different view of like supporting the team rather than taking a blueprint as an architect, right? In terms of guiding the team so that they take the decisions quickly rather than architects giving a blueprint and then team executing it. So each one within the team has to be transformed like how the thought process of an architect. That's what I feel. Okay, that's what I put it across to my development teams as well. Now it's not about syntaxes, because if you code say about 203 lines of code 10 years back, now you just have to write five lines of code, but you don't know where to write with the frameworks, right? So which means that which stack to select, which one to select, right? So everybody's becoming an architect to define what is the pros and cons and choose the platform. So that's it. That's coming to the developers right now. So that's a different challenge. So it's in the casualty room, and then the team has to fix it, and architect is one of the participant in there as a coach
Okay.
or a support. That's what I view it.
Okay. Gautam, what is it for you?
Yeah. So in our scenario, like in retail, right? So how we used to interact with business always comes up with pain, right? So which is the problem statement. And we also have to listen, like, okay, what is their side of things, understand what exactly is their challenge. And similarly, we'll have to translate it into technical terms and discuss with the development team. And then they give their pain areas, which is again their side of a challenge, wherein if that requirement comes in, then architecturally there is a problem. So we get to hear a lot of pain from both the sides, right? Now, after we get all the requirements, after we take in a requirement from business and give it to the development, and the development team also delivers that requirement, then comes the other pain of change management. Because if it is an existing application, then it is quite okay, right? So because we are just going to make a change on the application, and we are going to give it to the the users, and then the users are going to use it, and then they are going to give a shabby feedback saying that, okay, the developer has done just his job, he has done whatever is the requirement, but it's still not meeting his expectation or his or her expectation. So those kind of issues are bound to happen in existing applications. The scenario which you explained, right, in Cognizant, the one-click thing that they deployed. So that is more of a scenario where there was a pain area, but there was no application that existed, right? So those kind of scenarios gives, or maybe that shows as if there are a lot of improvements that has happened. But if you are making just a transformation or a change on the existing apps, that doesn't actually show as if we are giving a huge change on the, or a change to the business. Because business or anyone who would actually look at something as a change only if it gives something as a new value add to them, right? Because till then, Cognizant never had, is what you are saying. And suddenly there is a new change that was introduced, and that gave some benefit. But what I'm talking about is an existing application, and you make some changes, and it's hard to convince the user to make a change management. I'll give you one example on that also. In almost like 4-5 years back, we had one of the point of sale system in one of our retail brands I worked with. So we changed the entire application from a legacy, the thick client model, where the database was there and the features was really bad. So the system was very old, and it was almost like end of life, right? So we changed that from a very old architecture into a cloud-based architecture, which could give you a visibility of the inventory across all the stores. You can make omni-channel. It was the state-of-the-art system that we deployed. But users still complain, right? Why? Because one is people are accustomed to that application, and making them change into a modern system still took a lot of change management to be released, right? Because people complain that, okay, one of the reasons that we even heard why that was a pain is because they had a very good relationship with the support team earlier. And the new support team was having issues with them supporting, because that's a team that they have to build rapport with, and it's a huge network, and building that rapport with that huge network is going to be a problem. That itself took 2 years just to stabilize and make people convinced that yes, this is the system they want, right? So these kind of issues are more of people centric, is what I would say.
Actually, it's kind of interesting when when you were making these statements, right? I just want to go back slightly off topic, but very critical to our whole team. Is you said we moved from a old architecture to a new architecture.
Right.
However, we had problems with change management. That actually means your architecture did not consider change management. It was treated as an afterthought, as a separate activity, which is a fundamental misunderstanding about architecture itself. Architecture needs to bake in change management. Architecture should avoid people's pain. So that architecture did not consider that a new support team is going to come in. How will we make it easy for them? The architecture should have considered that. What you had is a good technical design for an old application to a new application. That was not architecture. I would suggest use the word technical design. We moved from one technology to another. If you had good architecture, the pain would not have happened. This is, I'm telling, overall architecture encompasses that also.
Right.
But kind of connecting to what you had said, there were already 10 different applications. We added another feature to it. But we realized that I cannot go and teach the user new things to 50 different applications. Now imagine this. I had 50 applications. Each one had 5 approvals, which means I had 250 use flows. 250 use flows, I have to teach it to 60,000 people. What training will I train? How much material can I do? Hence, that is why we came up with one click where they didn't have to do anything. One fine day, they will open, one email will pop up in their mailbox. Leave approval, approve Gowtham, leave to this, to that. It is actually an enhancement to a leave management application which was 3 years old. The next email is from a SAP expense approval. SAP expense approval, PK wants to buy new laptop worth 2 lakhs, approve yes or no. Okay, so this one click took care of change management also. So we actually changed not one application, but 50 applications and 250 use cases with this one click. But we did this keeping one objective in mind: no change management. So then we had to kind of say, okay, because change management is a pain, the architecture should take care of change management also. It should. So basically, as you said, right, I noted it, 3 buckets of pain, right? Pain for the business, pain for the developers, and pain for the change management team. Architecture should address all the 3 pains. It cannot say, I will do one, the rest 2 is somebody else's problem. Then we don't have an architecture there. Or the architecture is very weak. And this is where architects fail miserably in today's world. And I've talked about that SharePoint implementation in few of the previous webcasts, right? So if the renewal didn't happen, it is an architecture failure. Oh, the solution works well, no bugs, but nobody is adopting it. Why? Because there is a pain. Nobody have used it. If like, for example, you are hungry, you're really hungry, and I put food in front of you, I don't have to teach you to eat. Even a monkey will put its hand out, take the food and put it in its mouth. You don't have to say, this is food, eat it, your hunger will go away. No need to do all that, right? If it's a real solution. But then if I'm going to make it hard to reach, then it will be difficult. Then I have to motivate that person to do that. And then I'm complaining, I am hungry, I made food for you, but you did not eat. Okay, and that's why I kind of think mothers are one of the best architects in the world. They will figure out how to make the child eat. They can easily say, I cooked, the child didn't eat. No, they don't. They figure out, should I add sugar in this? Should I add ghee in this? Should I show the crow and sparrow and make it eat? Great architectural solution. You know, if mom had a developer mindset, no, they will say, I have made food, it's in the kitchen, go take it and eat it. If you don't eat it, it's your problem, not mine. I have made good food.
Right.
Thankfully, they don't have a developer or a technologist mindset.
Eventually, they do it when the children become teenagers.
Anyway,
Yeah.
PK, Deepak, your thoughts?
Let PK go first.
Yeah.
Sure. So, thinking about, I think Kumaran rightly brought out the topic of change management as well, being part of architecture, right? So, I think, especially in my position, in my role, it's not about pre-sales. It's not about architecting a solution. It's about telling the customer, boss, number one, you have pain. You need to realize that. Number two, you have already paid for a solution that can actually solve your pain. You just need to be aware that you have the solution. Go figure out which is to be applied to what. So I think this is primarily the role I play, which means it's not about figuring out how to develop or architect a solution. It's about helping helping the team realize, hey, you've been living with this pain, right? You know it is there, but do you also know that you're paying for a solution that can actually solve it? So can we figure out how these two can be mapped together, right? And a very interesting situation that I was in very recently, and all thanks to COVID. This is you heard about this technology around being able to provision laptops, right? Traditionally, this customer, a huge conglomerate, 300,000 plus users, they've been living on a solution on premise, which will, you have your task sequence, you plug your laptop into the network, this system will provision it for you, a system center based solution, right? Yeah, it does it in like 45 minutes. Previously, we have done projects where, from 1.5 hours, can I make it like 45 minutes? How do I bring that down? We were trying to solve a pain is what we all understood. But for the past 2 years, when we were having these conversations with the customers saying, hey, can we move the system to the cloud? Why don't we look at something like an autopilot where, your user himself will provision it, and it's all on the cloud, it's cool, right? But I think we miserably failed in telling them, what is the pain it would solve, right? It's not about a cool technology because we've been using something for years together. Now let's move on to something new, something cool, right? I think that was the positioning we were. Please don't mind the background.
Yeah, that's okay.
Bell here. So, but then COVID happens, and I think COVID was a good trigger for a lot of digital transformation, not just blindly, but with pains coming out so so obvious, and we know that this is an opportunity for me to solve. I already have it with me. I don't really need to invest anything. I don't have time to invest and architect any solution at this point in time, right? So this was a situation 12 a.m. in the night with the CIO. With my team on the call, we are talking about. Am I still on the call? I'm not sure if there was a network blip.
But we can hear you.
Oh, okay, fine.
Now it's back. You're back.
Okay, good. So we're talking about, hey, my facilities are shut down. Okay, all my buildings are down, and none of my employees can get to the building, including the IT team. Now I need to send 80,000 laptops across the world, and it has to be corporate devices provisioned. So now suddenly the pain came up, and we've been talking about this for the past 2 years, to move to the cloud. But all that is fine. Now I have the pain. How do we solve it, right? So that's when suddenly a technology that was there all the time, you had it, you had paid for it, and suddenly we realized, we should get going with this one, because there is a way your user can automatically provision a new laptop, your OEM directly shipping it, user handles the entire provisioning. There is no IT, zero touch IT. How do we do this? So suddenly within a week, we have a fantastic technology doing this, and it goes ahead and provisions 70,000 plus laptops across the globe. Like within less than a week, we are able to put things together and get going. Right now, the irony, what I'm getting at is, it's not always about developing something new to solve a problem. It's about being aware that that you have those solutions with you. It's like having a car. You don't know how to drive. You always depended on a driver, and there is an emergency. You need to get to the hospital. You have a car. You can't drive it,
Right. Yeah.
So I think that is the irony. It's very important if you are investing on a technology, on a solution, while the solution can be developed intuitive enough, on the lines of what Anand Kumaran is saying, around how the technology can have the change management built in. I think it is also on the buyer and the seller to ensure that awareness also seeps in. It's not about training, right? It's about the awareness. Hey, the solution you are paying for can solve X, Y, Z. Be aware. You may not have the pain today, but be aware. This is, every solution is done or is developed to solve a pain. So let's be aware of it and be able to press those buttons when the need arises, right? So I think that was an interesting learning for us also, because when we talk to customers, we don't take those steps to let them know what our solution can do, and what kind of pain our solution solves. It's always about trying to sell, trying to push those cues into the customer environment, but not about picking up the real business problems and saying, hey, the solution that you already have, is capable of solving those problems. Why don't you have a look at it? Right. So that's something I thought I'll share.
Interesting.
Lines of this discussion. Yeah.
Deepak, your thoughts?
So that,
But what just reminded is, in Tamil there is a saying: you have butter in your hand, but you're going around the world telling where is the ghee, like that.
So actually, I want to look at it from two perspectives. One is, why does this happen, right? And to take from everything is architecture point of view, which Kumaran you have, it is finally architect's fault, right? So
Yes, I agree.
So why do architects land up in this position? It is not that they do it intentionally. I believe at some point.
One small correction: they never took off to land. Only if they take off, they ran to the wrong place. They never took off.
Yes,
That architecture never took off.
No, I'm just trying to think from the skills perspective. I'm trying to think from the skills perspective. What does an architect need to actually solve, not to end up in this situation, right? Mm-hmm. How do you not end up in this situation? And to your point about why can't architects get people to talk about their pains, right? So it's like being a good doctor, right? The patient comes to you, they have some problem, right? A good doctor knows how to get the problem out of a patient, right? It's not always patient's fault that they don't know how to describe their problem.
Okay,
right?
Okay.
Right.
Point. Okay.
You cannot blame the patient for not being able to quantify everything and that give you in a small enough pieces so that you can run your agile program and all those things. It is not their job.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
It is completely not their job to even think about those things. Right? It is the job of the architect to be able to, the word which I tend to use is facilitate the answer out of them, right? You cannot simply touch everywhere and say, does it pain here, does it pain there, and so it's like a diagnosis. You have to think about it like a good doctor, right? Why do we say this doctor is experienced or this doctor knows? Right? It's not that the same doctor looking at the same kind of reports can come to completely different conclusions. Why does that happen, right? And how does their diagnosis skills are much better, right? So I think that is where if you are looking at pain as a source of innovation or source of improvement, you need to be really good at diagnostics, right? As an architect, you need to be able to ask the right questions, right? People are not going to talk. You yourself said, right? You just go and ask people about where they are. Everything is fine, right? Everything is fine. Especially when they don't call you when you go to them. They don't care. They never called you, right? If especially in pre-sale situation, they don't know what they want, right? Unless unless there is something really there, right? So this is where the skill part of architects, I think they need to have.
Great
right?
point. I think you just reminded me of Harish Vaidyanathan, right? The first thing he taught me when I joined consulting services, right? I keep repeating it often. He said, don't be a chemist, be a doctor. Okay. Headache, Saridon. Okay. Web application, AngularJS 3.1. Okay. Collaboration, SharePoint. Okay. That is a chemist. Right. So I think the equivalent is like, as you're telling, probably that thing about being a doctor is very different from being a chemist kind of a, right? Okay. So great. I think this is a good start for all the new to join. So the last segment, right, is basically about the key takeaways that we got from this. So I think I got three or four main points from each of you, right? I think one is when Raja was talking, right? It's about we need to differentiate between a symptom and a pain. Okay, so that's one thing which architects tend to respond to the symptom than the pain and start giving solutions for that. It creates a problem. From Gowtham's, I was thinking that there were three pains, right? Developer, business, and change management. But it's only the developer pain that usually gets high priority. Business pain comes second. Third is, or usually the orphaned child is a change management pain. That's never considered in the architecture, right? If that gets captured, probably we'll have a good architecture in place. Okay. A good change management is one where it doesn't exist. The design should take care of it. The moment we talk change management, that means architecture has failed. From PK's thing, I think the Kane, which I kind of got out an interesting thing, he kind of used the word COVID. Okay. Can we use something as a pain enhancer so that people can't avoid it? So COVID became a pain enhancer. You could not ignore it anymore. You could not hide it under the carpet. It made you look at the pain right in the face and do something about it. So maybe should we need to develop pain enhancers instead of pain reducers and painkillers? Actually, maybe we should do a pain enhancer methodology so that the pain becomes very obvious and you can do something about it.
The reverse is also true. You can also have pleasure enhancers.
Yeah.
Right. Right. So if you see, what is WhatsApp, right? WhatsApp is a pleasure enhancer. Right. Facebook is a pleasure enhancer. They don't serve any purpose except pleasure enhancement. Right. And they are very successful, right? So his opposite is also true. If you can and you can get innovation not just by pain but also by pleasure. People want to enjoy doing it. In fact, I was looking at this. You've seen that piano experiment, right? You get people to the stairs become piano, right? That is actually a pleasure enhancer, right?
Correct.
You get people to walk up the stairs and not use the escalator, and still people enjoy doing it. That's why you get the change done, right? Because it is enjoyable to do it, not just the other way around.
That's an excellent point, Deepak. Actually, most of the latest generation, right, they tend to move in that direction rather than looking at the pain. They're looking at the pressure, how to get, pleasure drives them. And that's a good strategy as well, actually.
And I think last one was Deepak's thing, right? It's about how do I be a good doctor? Then today we are just focusing on great pharmacist. Who's a great pharmacist? He has AWS certification, he has GWC certification and Azure certification. He has architecture certification from all the three. He's a great architect. No, you're a great chemist or a pharmacist. You have medicine from all the companies. That's who you are, not a doctor. Okay, I think that's the other thing which I took. What would be your takeaways, Deepak?
I think it's a very good discussion for me to listen to different perspectives, right? And different industries. For me, that is the main vested interest for me. to learn how problems are seen from different perspective. And I have known PK for years, so I know what he thinks about, and I see his problems on day-to-day basis. But what I heard from Raja and Gowtham of the real problems which they have seen in their industry, right? That is a learning for me.
Awesome. Okay. Raja?
So the perspectives, right? So the different perspectives, definitely that gives a lot of value addition to me. How the change management view.
Kind of like the analogy that you had given on mother being the architect, which is which is actually true, right? So that is one of the learning as well. So as an architect, everyone, even they have to understand the pain of business, and only then they can deliver solution, right? So maybe that is one of the key takeaway. And obviously, right? Okay, when we hire or when we work with any third parties, the architect also needs to be aware of our business and the pain areas, and only then they can give us a better solution, right? So that is something that, yeah, so that is because they can't just be pure technical architects, but should be business driven as well.
Interesting when we spoke about the fact that architecture should already take care of change management, right? So now I'm not sure how much of that is achievable, but then even if we could do like 60% of change management in your design itself, I think that's an achievement, right? That takes care of. I think most solutions today, get there. They're not totally there, but that would be fantastic. I think that's a very interesting perspective I am taking away from today's call.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks all. Thanks for joining a great discussion. We will discuss a little bit more as we go on.